I, Peter, take you, David, to be my lawful wedded husband.
I, Peter, take you, David, to be my lawful
I, David, take you, Peter, to be my lawful wedded husband.
I, David, take you, Peter, to be my lawful wedded husband.
I am now very happy to announce that you are now legally
History has been made as the UK's first same-sex weddings have taken place on the stroke of midnight on 29th March this year. In the wake of the changes on legislation, same-sex couples now have their marriages recognised by law. Right behind me is the Forum, the landmark destination in Norwich, with a mix of community events and activities. Among all the events that have ever taken place here, Norwich Pride, the yearly celebration for LGBT community in Norfolk, are giving an additional and unique value to the Forum. The Norwich Pride has grown to be an annual event since 2009, and it has been celebrated for 6 years. Each year, the rainbow flags are all proudly flying across Norwich. The biggest event of Pride is the parade led by the Norwich Samba Band. It started at the Chapelfield Garden and looped through the city centre. Although there are celebrations at those who have won same-sex marriage, there are also some unfinished business, including homophobic bullying. Earlier before Norwich Pride, I joined a public debate about the safety of young LGBT people in schools and spoke to the teachers. They told me that the homophobic bullying continues to be widespread in Britain's schools.
They could be, they have an awful lot of verbal abuse. Some can even be raped. They could be threatened with weapons. Not all of this would happen inside school, but obviously these are students that they know that then do this to them outside school as well.
Stonewall shows us that 2/3 of young LGBT people are being bullied in school or have had a negative experience since they've come out. Obviously the Stonewall statistics don't include trans people, and I would bet on saying that that percentage was much higher, albeit affecting a smaller group of people. But just generally, I think it's a bigger issue than that. The issue is also the atmosphere in schools and the climate in it being accepting for everybody. And one thing that particularly worries me is that over 90% of young people in schools hear LGBT-phobic language. And I think that just creates an environment in schools of intolerance and one that isn't welcoming to people.
What kind of impact do you think these actions will have to their schoolwork?
This will have a huge impact because bullying, any kind of bullying, but especially this, because they have no support to go to, they don't feel that they can go and ask someone for help sometimes. It will make their academic achievement drop. They might truant and then eventually they might drop out. So they'll have a lower achievement than other students if they don't get appropriate support at the right time.
So what kind of measure have the schools taken to educate the students?
Well, as you heard in the meeting, the issue is that it's very patchy. There are some schools which have excellent practice, and the research shows that when schools do have really good practice and training in place, then actually the experience of LGBT people is so much better. But it's patchy, and often it relies on there being a confident LGBT teacher who's out, or a pupil like Henry who's confident and out. But where those things don't happen, actually very often the school doesn't have anything. And that's why I think really we need to look to government and the Ministry for Education to put in some reforms which prove that schools have to teach teachers once a year about equalities, and that when teachers are trained, they're trained in equalities. And I think it has to start on that level with teachers, but to make that happen, it needs to start on the bigger level of government and Department for Education.
Also, there's another debate going on in the British society about the legislation on same-sex marriage.
That David Cameron should never ever have entered it, and he knows now he regrets every moment he did, because it's an absolute minefield for all sorts of reasons. They're now having to redefine a husband and a wife. Okay? That was a concept that they never thought of, but many of us did see that coming a long time ago.
It's a really positive thing, but it's not enough yet. I mean, just because same-sex marriage is legal now doesn't mean sort of LGBT people are seen as equal in communities. So I think more legislation to actually ensure equality of pay, of sort of equal opportunities and all that kind of stuff would benefit everyone. But really it's about changing people's opinions.
I'm not a religious person, so religion doesn't come into it for me. If two people are happy with each other and they want to get married, then why not?
I think we've gone too far from God's law. I think God's law is above any law. Obviously the law of the land is important.
One way I'm for it, but if it involves education of children, bringing up children, I don't believe that actually two parents of the same sex can actually do the job properly for a child.
With the law coming into effect, the debate has become polarized in religious people and organizations. Mark Taylor is the minister in Carlton Road Baptist Church who has given his criticism towards Norwich Pride. I talked with him about his criticism.
I think their choice of lifestyle does not line up well with the Christian scriptures, with Christian teaching. You know, I'm very much, I guess you'd call me a traditional or evangelical in my viewpoint. But I do believe that human relationships, and the pinnacle of human relationship, is to enter into that loving partnership where that commitment is seen and demonstrated in a public way, maybe through marriage. But I can only recognise that the Bible teaches that that relationship is right between a man and a woman. I hope that my comments come across graciously rather than judgmentally or in a way that condemns anybody. That's not my intention.
How did you feel about Norwich Pride when you saw the photos of the rainbow flag of LGBT communities? How did you feel about that? Actually,
the flag issue I find really offends me. And you may think, well, how can a flag with lots of beautiful colours on offend me? And right from the beginning of Christian teaching, we have this story of a man called Noah. And there's a flood. God destroys the world because of its wickedness, but spares one righteous man and his family. And once that saving power of God has been seen and the judgment of God has been seen, the promise is this beautiful rainbow which is put in the sky, which is God's promise to us that he's never going to destroy us with a flood again. And then you come across the LGBT group, the gay pride group, and they take for their flag the colours of God's promise, this rainbow in the sky. And it seems to me that they've twisted that a little bit. So the flag I find offensive, particularly when that flies over County Hall in Norwich.
Meanwhile, there are also some churches that are supportive of same-sex marriage. Right behind me is the Octagon Unitarian Chapel that witnessed the wedding of Zoe and Lorelei, who are believed to be the first same-sex couple in Norfolk after the legislation. I spoke to Judith Farmer, who conducted the wedding of Zoe and Lorelei. She told me that their wedding is a landmark of the church.
And for me to be part of that was a real privilege. The wedding itself was no real difference to any of the weddings that I do. You know, it was two people in love getting married. But the background was really important, and it felt like it was a landmark in our history of Unitarians in Norwich. I use the word landmark because it was so important, because it was the first wedding of the same-sex people, for the same-sex people, single-sex marriage, that we've ever done here, and we think it was the first in Norfolk after the new legislation in March. We do quite a lot of heterosexual weddings, but this was our first single-sex, which was great. We have a gay-friendly community. You know, we do have a representation here, which is great.
Zoe and Lorelei got married on the 12th of July and are still in their honeymoon mood. They told me about their stories when I went to their house and talked with them.
For the first time in my life, I feel like an adult. It's fantastic. Yeah, it's like being in a dream. It's like, you know, like a beautiful dream. And I don't want to wake up. I don't want to go back to work.
Yeah, I know.
She's very sweet and tolerant and just accepts everything, and she likes me, and she makes me feel good about myself, and everything's fair. She's very fair, very generous. I like it, keep going. So there's nothing that you like about me then?
Just absolutely everything, darling.
Oh, thank you. We met on the internet, on a dating website, and I'm called Zeusk. And I can remember that Lorelei's chat-up line was, "You can say anything you want to me as long as it's not goodbye." My mum, I was in my 20s when I came out to my mum, and I'd never had a gay relationship, and I thought I can't until I've told my parents, and I got the vicar to tell her, and she was furious, and she more or less gave me an ultimatum. She said, "Not on my doorstep." So what I did was I got engaged to my boyfriend, because Mum obviously wasn't going to accept a gay relationship. But he was almost 20 years older than me. He was so getting on my nerves. So anyway, I broke up with him, and when I moved to Newcastle to finish my degree, I was 23 when I had my first relationship. Lorelei didn't come out till she was 41. I came out when I was 23 and got no support, sadly. But when I came, moved back down south when I was in my 40s, and Dad was quite openly talking about things. He was saying things like, "Oh, you need to go to Brighton, Zoe. You want to see the Pavilion because they put pink floodlights to celebrate Gay Pride." And he started talking about things like this, and then I realised that Dad was actually quite supportive, and also realised towards the end that maybe Mum was a little more supportive. It wasn't so much that she was homophobic, it's more that she worried what people would think. We're confident enough now to hold hands in public and have a hug in public. God, years ago you wouldn't have done that. I mean, it does help, you know, that the law's on our side. That really does help now. And I haven't had to sort of play that card, but you know, if we were in that situation, then that's an option. I know that a lot of religions do tend to be a bit bigoted, but it is the minority. I think it's a minority of people who feel that way. It shouldn't be an issue, because what's the problem? We're just getting married, you know. Most, if you went to any church and did a silent poll on how they felt about, you know, whether or not to have a same-sex marriage, I'm pretty sure that the majority would vote for, and unfortunately those are the people with the smaller voices. I seriously believe, and from our experiences getting married ourselves, that most people who went to our wedding were Christian people, and they were quite happy to be there and thoroughly enjoyed it, and said that how much they enjoyed it more than any wedding they'd been to. It was brilliant. My own experience is that society has become more and more and more tolerant in my lifetime, and I've been more confident in the last 10 or so years to be outwardly gay, to be honest. There's still issues, for example, in my job as a school teacher, I still feel as if I have to not broadcast the fact. Much as staff are fine about it, I'm not sure how parents would feel, but it is a difficult one because the school needs to recruit, and there's the worry that there will be parents who would be not understanding. Yeah. The children I teach, you can tell from quite a young age which children are gay. You can tell, and I think it would be great for them to have role models, particularly on the teaching staff. But it's still a controversial subject. If they asked if I was in a same-sex marriage, I say yes, and I'm very happy. And if they say anything against it, I say, well, you know, it's the law.
With the debate going on, I started to think about how the legislation was passed in the government and how far the government has gone on this issue. Earlier, Norwich South MP Simon White gave me his answer for that.
Cross-party support was secured, so as well as Liberal Democrats, Conservative and Labour leaders and the Green Party with their one MP all supported the legislation as it went through the House. Of course, there were some MPs on all sides who couldn't quite bring themselves to support it, but nonetheless the parties themselves and the leadership of those parties did back the legislation, and that cross-party support was really important. But we were all hearing very similar messages from many of our constituents who were from the LGBT community, that passing this legislation was an important step towards equality in this country. Well, I'm very pleased that the government has gone as far as it has to date. Obviously, the introduction of civil partnerships a few years ago was an important step in this direction, but this is the next logical and obvious step beyond civil partnerships to full marriage rights. And indeed, as part of the legislation, those couples who had a civil partnership do currently have the option now, free of charge, to convert that to a formal marriage. There are still a lot of challenges out there for the LGBT community, a lot of challenges in society, problems with homophobia still, but we are making steps in the right direction, and I think this legislation is an incredibly important step. Here in Norwich, we're very fortunate to have a very diverse community, one that is very welcoming and very accepting, and you can see that through the Pride marches that have been taking place in the city every year for the last 6 years.
When it comes to the registration of same-sex marriage, I was wondering if there's any difference between the same-sex marriage and opposite-sex ones. Also, the conversion from civil partnership to civil marriage is another issue that many gay couples are concerned.
It's literally exactly the same. So fees are exactly the same. In fact, we don't even distinguish between them. We just call it marriage. And it's just, regardless of who's coming forward for that marriage, as long as they're legally entitled to get married to each other, then it's just a marriage. So in terms of whether it's same-sex or opposite-sex marriage, it's exactly the same process, exactly the same costs, and everything they have to go through is exactly the same. The words that they have to choose to say to each other is the same. The only difference is that during an actual ceremony, you'll be saying the words husband and wife, but for a same-sex marriage, it'll be wife and wife or husband and husband, the declaratory and contracting words that they'll say.
So what about those people who've already joined the civil partnership? What if they want to get married?
The conversion process is going to be available for couples who've had a civil partnership, And that, in the first instance, for those who didn't have the opportunity to get married, so for people who had formed a civil partnership before the 29th of March this year, 2014, that is going to be offered free for 1 year. So the first conversion can take place on the 10th of December this year. The actual process will be both people would have to show up. We think, we haven't got the final details yet, but we think it's going to have to be done in a register office. So probably in Norfolk, that would have to be done here at Churchman House. And that would be the registrar would need to be there with the couple, and it would just be a paperwork process.
There's no doubt that the debates and arguments on the same-sex marriage will still go on for quite a while, although the legislation has been made. Nonetheless, both civil partnership and civil marriage are making their impact on the social equality, and there's still a long way to go for more tolerance and equality. Thank you for watching. Miranda Wang, Norwich City Centre.